Hey, how's it going? It's good to see you today. Welcome to the good, the bad, and my honest opinion. Today talking about the Canon 70-200 2.8, the RF version that is. I'm going to talk about the things I like, the things I don't like, and at the end share my honest opinion with you so that you can make the decision for yourself if you'd like to buy this lens or not. Without further ado, let's dive into this review. Whoop. First off, let's talk about the good. This lens is incredibly sharp. That's a no-brainer really because this is an L series Canon RF lens. It's gonna be sharp. It better be sharp for the price you're paying for it, am I right? But I'm not gonna compare this to other 70-200s, nor am I gonna pixel peep on some of my images. It's just a very sharp lens and you can't go wrong with it in that department. It has a fast 2.8 aperture, which is great for low light situations, or if you just want lots of bokeh, this lens is bokeh-licious. It's gonna look super creamy. Your images are gonna look really nice, and I know you'll be pleased with the look of that. Next up on the agenda for today, this lens offers a versatile range. You can shoot a lot of different things with this lens. You can shoot wildlife, nature, portraits, sports, anything really. This lens is extremely versatile and it can fit a lot of different photographer needs. So if you need one lens that can do a ton of stuff, this will be the one for you. On a technical note, I haven't noticed any chromatic aberration in this lens, even shooting in very high contrast situations. That is my personal experience with this lens. There may be others out there that notice a little bit in their lens, but for me, I haven't noticed any, and that is fantastic. There's also very little vignetting if you're shooting at 2.8 at 70 millimeters. Now, as you zoom in, that vignetting is gonna go away, and it is very little to begin with, very easy to fix with Photoshop or Lightroom, nothing to worry about whatsoever, but just wanna point out that you may get a little bit of it in certain situations. On the lens itself, something I really love is Canon's control rings that they put on their RF lenses. This proves very useful to me to change my ISO. That's primarily what I set mine to, and that's useful for photo and for video. I'm sure you can find a use for that, either with changing your ISO or whatever is most useful to you. Just something that I want to point out that I really like about this lens. I also love that this lens has a lock, especially since this lens extends outward. When you zoom in and out, it's nice to have a lock that can snap into place just like that so that your lens doesn't zoom in or out when you're storing it in your bag or wherever really, or if you just want to lock it in at 70 and you don't have to worry about it zooming in or out. Love how this lens has a lock. Something else that you've probably heard in any review of this lens and even the main announcement of this lens is the lens size. It's a lot smaller than Canon's past 70-200 lenses, and that's awesome. I love it. There's not much else to say about it other than I love having a smaller lens, especially when I'm traveling. It's not taking up as much space. This lens gives you 3 stabilization modes, which is really nice depending on what you're photographing. The first one is for general purpose. The second is for panning, like if you're tracking a bird or tracking an athlete. And the third is if you are moving around a lot and your subject is just kind of out of control. I haven't used that mode at all, I don't think. Yeah, I haven't used that mode at all. But I will say the general purpose stabilization is fantastic, and also the panning is really nice. I can tell the difference between the modes, and that is important to me as well. Let's talk about some of the accessories of this lens. The tripod collar is nice. Metal construction snaps into place, really secure. That's pretty much all I have to say about that. I love that tripod collar. The hood is really nice as well. I love the addition of this little slidey flap thing right here so that you can put a CPL filter on your lens and be able to adjust that. That's really cool to have, to be able to use filters with the hood. And that's what I've got to say about that. Good construction, real solid. It's a good hood. Now let's talk about the bad. And I want to preface that by saying that these things I'm about to talk about aren't necessarily bad. They're just things that aren't as great as I would like them to be, and I'd love to see them improved in the second edition of this lens. But let's go ahead and talk about these things. The first is that the zoom ring is further back than your control ring and focus ring. Not a huge deal, but it's a little different to get used to, especially when a lot of other Canon zoom lenses have their zoom ring as the first one on the lineup. If you're switching between lenses a lot, you may try to zoom and you're just messing with the focus ring, and that can be awkward at different times. So just want to point that out. It's going to be something to get used to. Also, the zoom ring, it doesn't have as much of a how do I want to put this? It takes about 2 turns to get to 200 from 70. So you can't just quickly snap like you could on the EF versions and go from 70 to 200 really quickly. You have to give it 2 turns for the most part, unless you just have really big hands and can just grab this thing and twist it, and don't break the lens though. But that is something that's a little different, and you know, if you're needing to zoom in or out really quickly, it may hold you back slightly. Let's talk about the hood again. Now, yes, I do love this little slidey flap thing here, but I do find that it comes open a lot unintentionally. So I'm out photographing different things, and then I'll notice that this is open, and I haven't touched it or meant to open it, and I don't like that because I want my hood on so that some dust and dirt or whatever doesn't get on the front of my lens, and that happens with this guy here. So I'd like to see this improved where it's a little more secure and not as easy to open or close, because it does open or close accidentally sometimes. For my video shooters, you may have some issues using this lens on a gimbal because it does extend outwardly and the weight shifts in the lens, so your balance is going to be off in the gimbal if you're shooting at 70 and then you need to go to 135 or 200 or whatever for whatever video you're creating. You may need to rebalance your gimbal. That can be annoying, and I want to point that out to you. And now for my honest opinion. I love this lens. I think it's an amazing lens that suits a lot of different needs. You can use this for nature and wildlife, for sports, for portraits, for general purpose, for products, whatever you want. This lens is extremely versatile. It's got a fast aperture, extremely sharp, little chromatic aberration. The accessories with it are really nice and have some good things and some bad things. But it's great. It's a phenomenal lens, and if you have the money and you think it will suit your needs, go for it. It's like having 4 prime lenses in one without the super wide apertures that those prime lenses give you. I mean, the sharpness and the autofocus speed, all that is there. It just doesn't have those super wide apertures, but I don't mind that for what I shoot with. If you are shooting in very low light situations, you may want to consider some of the RF prime lenses, or if you just love that bokeh-licious look, you may want to go with those. But with this lens right here, when you have it zoomed out to 135 or 200 at 2.8, you're going to get that bokeh-licious look. It looks phenomenal. It's so creamy, so smooth. You'll love it. So I recommend this lens to pretty much any photographer. I think you're going to love it. I think you're going to use it a lot. And yeah, if you got the money for it, go for it. Hope you enjoyed this casual review. Smash that like button if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.